Okay, so welcome back, everybody. I'm supposed to put, oh, it's okay, the view's fine. What I want to do today is give sort of a crash course of the first half of Sefer Yeshayahu, because you're up to around probably about 25 chapters in, but we didn't start Yeshayahu yet. But in light of what we did in Sefer Menachem last week, I want to explain Yeshayahu. Now, Ramosh asked in the beginning, what's the order of the book? What I want to claim is chapter 1 is almost the end of the book chronologically, but chapter 2 is the beginning of the book chronologically, even though chapter 6 seems to be the first chapter. Anyone understand that? Chapter 6, a lot of Parshanim say that that's his opening, that's called what's called a Nevuat HaKdasha. So the first chapter of Yirmiyahu and the first chapter of Yechezkel are classic, what's called Nevuat HaKdasha, when the Navi gets his job. The burning bush, this week's parsha of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's called a Nevuat HaKdasha, a Nevuah when the Navi gets his job. So it seems like chapter 6 in Isaiah is when the Navi gets his job, because that's when he's given a job. But then why is that chapter 6 and not the beginning? But I want to show you that chapter 1 is almost the end of Yeshayahu's career, and it's sort of like the main point of the book. And chapter 2 begins chronologically, where the book begins in time of Uziel. And then chapter 6 is not his first nevuah, but a key event in his life, which I'll try to cover all that today. It's called not Nevuat of Hakdasha. It's not when Yeshayahu begins his job, it's when God decides to leave the country. It's called Nevuat Siluk, when the Shekhinah is leaving. So let's get to work. I'm going to begin with the opening lines of Yeshayahu to get the time period, and then try to understand why the first chapter is so harsh. Okay, so let's share my screen, and we're going to begin with Chumash, Mina Navi. So Chazon Yisrael ben Amot, Asher Chazal Yudav Yerushalayim, B'mei Uziel Yotam Machaz Chizkiel Macha Yehuda. That's a long time. Now, what's important, and go back to our sine wave from last week to appreciate what we did last week. Uziel is a high point in Jewish history, where things are going great. I'll get to my shape there. Okay, in the time of Uziel, things are going really good. We're wealthy, etc. Things start going bad under Yotam. Okay, get worse under things get even worse under Achaz, and they hit rock bottom. What happened here? Oh, that's not good. They hit rock bottom under Chizkiel. There's a bit of recovery under Chizkiel, and then rock bottom again under Menachem, and then return under Yoshiel. But the time period that we're talking about of this Navi is going to be all of this. That's number one, a long time. But the most important thing, notice the derivative. It's when everything starts falling down. And at the same time period, we have other Navim, Hosea, Amos, and Micha, which overlap with Yeshayahu. It's called the Arba Navim. And they're all basically coming to explain this problem that we talked about last week. Why is God allowing Ashur to punish us? If you read chapter 10 in Yeshayahu, Hoy Ashur Shevet Api, that was his whole point, that God's sending Ashur against us because of our bad behavior, even though we warned this way beforehand. But the people don't understand why, even though we're so religious, why things are so bad. So all these Navim, the biggest problem is how to explain why Ashur is so successful, and why does God allow Ashur to punish a nation that's way more righteous than they are. And then again, why we're saved at the last minute with Chizkiel. And the biggest problem is Chizkiel is probably the firmest king we ever had up until that point. And why did things go bad? So let's stop the share here. And we're going to read the first chapter and get on to... Oh, hi, Terry. You having trouble connecting? Got it? Okay, good. Alrighty. So let's begin with Yeshayahu Perak Aleph, and we'll just read a little bit. So we have the time period. I want to prove to you that the time period of the opening nevuah has to be Chizkiel after destruction, because he listens to his opening line. Shimu Shamayim v'azinu aretz ki Hashem diber, b'nim gidati v'rmamti v'hem pashubi. Now, who is Yeshayahu plagiarizing with his opening line? Shimu Shamayim v'azinu aretz. Someone give me a quick, easy answer.
Hazinu.
For sure, Sirat Hazinu. And we'll see, Hazinu echoes all through his nevuot. Anyone remember what the topic of Shirat Hazinu is?
Jewish history?
No, it's not Jewish history.
Crime and punishment.
We don't have a book of Jewish history. We just have a book of our failures.
Crime and punishment.
That's all the tochachot and the Shema. As you know, people.
Golus.
No, that's also the tochachot. Hazino, in fact, Hazino doesn't talk about Golus at all. Hazino is simple. It says, when things go wrong, don't blame God, blame yourselves. You know, it's expecting, as Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the people, when you come to Israel, things are bound to go bad. I guess, and as people aren't aware of this, let me read something from Chumash real fast to show you how simple it is and how scary Shirat Hazinu is, but why Yeshayahu is using Hazinu. Remember, my whole point is that the people can't understand why is such terrible punishment of Ashur wiping out the country happening during the reign of Chizkiyahu, who's the firmest king. And the people just don't buy it. Now, if I go back to Shirat Hazinu, where are we? Yeshayahu, let me go back to Chumash, open up Devarim, chapter 31. Okay. The introduction to Hazinu is an end of Parsha Vayelech, where God tells Moshe as follows. After Hakel, okay. God tells Moshe, it's time for you to die. The people are going to sin, follow other gods. They'll break my brit. When you come into the land, people are bound to become, the land, therefore be good. They're bound to follow the agricultural gods. They'll go into wealth and prosperity, and they're going to forget me. If they don't follow my laws properly, if the prosperity gets to their head, they become obnoxious and haughty and only care about their wealth and don't use their wealth properly, I'll get angry with them. I'll hide my face. That means I'm not going to answer their prayers. They'll be eaten up by their enemies. And then when things go bad, when I send enemies to punish them, they're going to blame God for what's going wrong. They're going to say, why am I losing my enemies? God's not helping me. The people are going to say, where's our God? How come we're losing our battles? How come things are so bad? And the people are going to turn and complain about God. God, you're not helping us. If you follow the Parshanim here, we'll prove it in a minute from the song. God's complaining. The people are going to blame God for their problems, and therefore I'm going to hide my face from them. I'm not going to answer their prayers for all the evil they've done because they turned to other gods. Now, therefore, write this Shirah, which is Shirat Hazinu, and teach it to Bnei Yisrael so they know it by heart. So this Shirah, this song will be a warning to them to remember who to blame when things go wrong. Because when I bring them to the land, okay, remember these lines, there's going to come up, they'll echo through Yeshayahu. They're going to come to the land of Israel, which I promised to offer us, a land flowing in milk and honey, as opposed to okay? They'll become prosperous and become, not just prosperous, but become affluent. And then they'll turn to other gods, the gods of wealth, etc., and they'll follow them, and they'll break my covenant. And then I have to bring punishment. And when all these bad things happen to them, this song will remind them who to blame for the trouble. Because I know what's bound to happen when people when things are too good. And therefore Moshe writes the Shirah. What's the Shirah now? In Perek, the opening 3 lines, it says poetic introduction. Listen up, as Yushmai Badabera, Tishmar Simirfi. My words should flow, but the song begins with Hatzur Tamim Polo. Number 1, God's always right. Now let's talk. Why? Ki Chol Dorach HaMishpat. All his ways are just. Ela Munah V'in Avel Tzadik V'Yasharu. Before we begin, let's set things straight. God's always right. Question: Shichet Lo? Is corruption his? Okay. The answer is no. Who's to blame? Banabumam, a crooked and perverse generation. Got it? Al Hashem Tikun. Are you going to blame God for your problems? Is God to blame when things go wrong? You foolish people, and not wise. Okay. Your God chose you. He bought you. He chose you. He wants you. He made you. He got you ready, and he's doing everything to help you. But he has to punish you when you go astray. And therefore, learn history and look at the history of our nation. Ask your parents; they'll tell you why God chose us and why He punishes us when things go wrong. Then we go through the, He finds us in the desert. He takes us there. He brings us to this good land. Got it? And then things go really well. Then Vaishmani Shurum Vayivat Shemanta Kasita, etc. And then basically he explains in detail what's bound to happen. Not what will happen, what's bound to happen when you come to the land. Now, keep that in mind now when you read Yeshayahu. Now go back to Yeshayahu for a second. I'm going to jump to chapter 2 for a minute. Let me go back one step. About the wealth here. let's go back to the time period of, I have this on a better source sheet. Let me stop this share. We're going to read from Sefer Menachem for a minute and show you why the high point, why is it that the time of Uziel, why are things so great? What's happening in the time of Isaiah? So here, in Divrei Yamim, actually in Melachim Bet, we have the story of Uziel. B'shat Chameshtei Lamatzia ben Uziel became king. I'm sorry, he was bad. My mistake. No, I don't need that. I got the wrong one. Stop that share. I need to open up Divrei Yamim. 1 second. Here we go. How great. We need Divrei Yamim, not Melachim. Give me 1 minute. Bible, Divrei Yamim. Chronicles 2, chapter 28 should be, that's Achaz already, 27, probably 26. Here we go. Okay, there. The people took Uziel to become king after his father died, and they made him king after Amaziah. Hu banat Elot. If Uziel can build up the port city of Eilat by the Red Sea, that's a superpower, okay? He brought it back to Yehuda after his father. In other words, Uziel was so strong, we're controlling Eilat. We haven't been there in ages. In the time of Shlomo, we had it, but that's a sign of our power as a nation during the time of Uziel. Okay, he's only 16 when he became king. He's king for 50-some years, and he does Yashar B'nei Hashem. Now, and when he was Doresh Hashem, things were good. Look at his military victories. Basically, he takes over. He takes over Ashdod, Aza, etc. The area of the Plishtim he takes over. God helps him against the Plishtim, and Ammon. That's on the. We have our western border is now clean. We have the coastal road. We have up to the Mediterranean. On the eastern front, Ammon is giving us presents. Now they're paying taxes to us, Uziel. His name is famous all the way down to Egypt, the Mitzrayim. Okay, Uziel builds Migdalim. We have remnants of this in archaeology as well. He built great buildings in Jerusalem. He does the walls of the city and makes them strong. He builds Migdalim in the desert. He makes Borot, Rabim. There's a lot of cattle, etc. Farmers, vineyards, all in the mountain range. Everywhere he was Oiv Adama. He has a massive army. See that? And we have all this how big his army is. And then, in the height of his wealth, he became too haughty, and he wants to bring Torah. And he brings Torah, and he gets Sarat. That's a famous story that we have in Divrei Yamim. Again, a sign of tremendous wealth, leading to haughtiness, leading to Sarat and his punishment. Now, keep that in mind, and let's read now chapter 2 of Isaiah and see if it fits. Why? If I'm going back to my, where's my share? Here we go. If I want to go back to, where's my toy? To my sine wave. Okay. We're going to talk about a potential time period, what people like to call Mashiach or call Achrit Amim. It hasn't been so good since the time of Shlomo, where the country's strong and prosperous, everyone's looking up to us, and we're following God. Uziel, there's no massive idol worship like before. We're following God. The temple is built. We get along with the northern Yoram ben Yoash and Uziel get along together. There's no more split kingdom. Again, they're split government-wise, but they get along. They're not fighting with each other. Now, let's read what happens now in chapter 2. I'm sorry, that was chapter 1. I'm sorry, no, chapter 2. This is the vision of Yeshayahu ben Amoz on Yudan Yerushalayim. What can happen, not in the end of days, at the end of this time period, we'll see in a minute. We're in a situation where we're almost ready to be a point where we're accomplishing our goal where other nations come to us. We're almost there where we'll be recognized by other nations as a superpower, strong, and doing great things with our wealth, like we talked about when we had David and Shlomo. Other nations, the famous line, where other nations are going to come. They want to learn from us. They'll come for arbitration to Jerusalem. We'll be in such a good position where people look up to us because of our wealth and strength and our kindness and our good deeds. We become a a nation people can learn from, and we can judge between nations. We can do arbitration. Again, hochiach lamim rabim, causing people. This is what they quote already outside the United Nations. They're going to take their plowshares and turn them into, and turn their swords into plowshares, etc. And lo yisagoy goy cherev, lo yad milchama. If we're doing our job, that's how great things will be. Now, if I go back, that's the potential that could happen in the generation right after Uziel. No, Uziel is almost there. Just keep the laws properly and start applying your wealth to build this just society. You're almost there. The next step, we can be what's called achrita amim at the end of this process. Now he's talking about the time period of Uziel, and I want to prove it. So I go back to Yeshayahu, and my Tanakh to Perek Bet. We need Yeshayahu. Okay, that's the wrong one. Okay, chapter 2. After this great introduction, this is what Yeshayahu says. Okay, Beit Yaakov l'chu b'necha b'har Hashem, etc. Here, pasuk zayin. But temelei arto kesef zahav. Listen to this description of the land in the time of Uziel, which fits perfectly. The land is full of gold and silver. Vein ketzelam otzrotav, no limits. Okay, but temelei arto susim, horses, and there's no end to its chariots. Remember Parshat HaMelech? The things the king can't have too much of, but you need enough of it. But there's gods, but people are praying their own gods, the gods they make with their own hands, means they're worshiping their own accomplishments. And then God says, they become too haughty, I have to lower them down. Okay? And God's warning now, what do you call it? Start hiding, because God's going to come and punish, because if you've taken your prosperity and it led to affluence and haughtiness instead of kindness and justice, and therefore I have to lower your haughtiness. Einei gavut adam shafel v'shachru ma'anashim v'nizkav Hashem levado b'yamahu. All these lofty men are going to be brought down. God's going to punish our haughtiness, and see the idea of Ram Benisa. Ki yom Hashem tzvot al kol ge'av Ram b'al kol nisa v'shafel al kol ze'el abanon. He's going to fight all this haughtiness. God blessed the nation with great wealth. Instead of using that wealth and using it for kindness and justice and helping the poor and the needy and building a just society, it became a society only caring about its wealth and its grandeur and not doing what it should have done with its wealth. And God's going to complain about every migdal gavoa, all the big towers that we saw Uziel built, all the big oniot, the big ships that go to the big ports in the sea. That fits the story about Eilat in the Mediterranean control. Okay, and then again, God is angry with all the haughtiness. Now, if you look at chapter 3, what he's complaining about, it's God, our master, is coming. He's going to take away from Yerushalayim everyone they're putting their faith in. The Giborim, the Anshe Melchama, the Shofet, knows all the leadership. He's going to punish them. And we'll talk about how is here. Nitzav l'riv Hashem in pasuk Yud Gimel. Nitzav l'riv Hashem b'omed l'dinamim. God's going to stand and argue with the quarrel with his people. Okay, God's going to come with justice, or with the judgment against the elders of his nation and the ministers. Okay, listen to this line. V'atem bi'artem hakerem gzilat ani b'betechem. What did you do? You harvested the entire vineyard, and you didn't give the poor what they needed, and therefore, it's your field. You took the entire field. You harvested everything. But what you took from the poor. You did gezel by not giving what you should have given to the poor people. It's gezelet ani b'batechem. Okay? It says, malachem tedaku et ami. Why are you crushing my people? Ufnei anim titchanu. You're grinding your hands in the face of the poor. That's this. And then he talks about the haughtiness. He talks about all the... But if you want to read about women's cosmetics and jewelry, read that on your own from Pasuk Tet Zayin to the end of the parak. Everything possible. It's talking about a wealthy society, and God's had it with it. Now, listen to what happens now in chapter. He goes on through chapter 4 about how he's angry with what's going to happen to Yerushalayim because of God's anger. And the most beautiful parak is chapter 5. Called Mashala Kerem. And this will take us back to, in light of this, we'll have to see chapter 1. What's happening is God blesses us in the time of Yeshayahu with wealth and greatness. We could have used that to fulfill our goal to become God's people. Instead, we become haughty and obnoxious and don't build a just society. And because of that, God is going to bring Ashur to punish us. Now, he's going to give an analogy using, again, the story of a vineyard. I call this the divine prophecy. We'll see why I'm using that name. He's going to make a ballad about a person, about an entrepreneur. Let me explain it outside, and then I'll read the psukim inside. Yeshayahu is going to make up a story about an entrepreneur who wants to make the best wine possible. Like, nowadays we have a lot of, what do you call those things? Wineries. There's a winery in Gush Etzion. There's one in Psagot. There's in Rishon LeZion. There's tons of wineries in Shiloh. Israel is a good place to make wineries. Now, when you want a winery, you want to make the best wine. To do that, you need the best grapes. If I want to be successful, I'm going to get everything that I can do to make sure I have the best wine possible. I want to make the best. So the first thing I need to do is I need a piece of land. I need fertile land. I need vines. I need the tree itself. I need put up a fence around it. I need to plow the field. I need to water it, etc. So there's going to be this entrepreneur who builds up this farm and vineyard. He's planning to make grapes, and everything's going to go bad. But he wants to explain who's to blame for the failure. So basically, he has a startup, it fails, and the question, who's to blame for the failure? So listen to the analogy he gives. Here we are. Yeshayahu chapter 5. Okay. My friend had a vineyard in a place called Ben Shemen, named after like Shemen, like a very good field full of ripe fruit. Okay. What did he do? One pasuk is a whole story I just told you. First, he dug the land and he got rid of all the rocks. He planted everything straight. You ever seen a nice vineyard? Everything's planted straight. He put the best vines there, everything planted. He built a watchtower over it. He even had a wine press all ready to take the grapes and crush them. By kabla sot anavim, he was hoping to make good grapes. Instead, it produced bushim, it meant sour grapes. We were supposed to get good grapes, we got sour grapes. Now, who's to blame for the failure? Now he's going to have the jury's out. In this story, he's going to talk to the jury. The people of Jerusalem are going to be his jury. And I want them to decide who's to blame for this fiasco. Now, he's going to say as follows. If I did something wrong, tell me what I did wrong. But I did everything I could do. So who's to blame if the grapes don't grow well? I can't blame myself because I watered it. I bought the best vines. I prepared the land perfectly. I put up a fence. I guarded it. The only thing to blame or what? You tell me. Yeah, what can you blame? Yeah, Mindy? Yeah, you have to unmute, Mindy. Press the space bar, yeah. Just hold down the space bar. No, we're not blaming God. Right? He's blaming the vines. I bought the best vines. They're not producing.
But God made the vines.
No, God made the vine, but the vines, again, the vines.
The vine is us. The vine is Bnei Israel.
God made the trees who make fruit. The trees are not making the fruit the way they're supposed to. He's blaming the vines. The vines are to blame because they were supposed to grow good grapes. The farmer did everything he could do. The only thing to blame are the vines. You advertised these vines were the best, and they didn't produce properly. Now, in the analogy, he's going to say, God is the entrepreneur. He's the farmer. He got everything ready. The Jewish people were the vines. Therefore, he did everything. He gave us rain. He gave us protection. He gave us peace. He gave us quiet. He gave us a good land. What were we supposed to do? We were supposed to take that prosperity and make wine and make good grapes. Instead, we did the opposite. We didn't produce what we could have done. But there's certain things that God can't do, only the vines can do. Certain things that God can help us, but only things that we can do. So listen what he says now in his analogy. Okay. What else could I have done for my vineyard that I didn't do? I was hoping for good grapes, how to get sour grapes. And now God's angry with this vineyard. He's had it. I mean, the farmer here is angry, and he's so angry he's going to just destroy it. He's going to just trash the whole thing. I'm telling you what I'm going to do to my vineyard. They're to blame, not me. I'm going to take down all its fences, etc., and let the animals come and trample over it. Again, take out the fences, and it'll be trodden down by all the wild animals. I'll let it lay in waste. Okay, I'm not going to plow it. I'm not going to prune it. I'm not going to hoe it, etc. Weeds are going to grow in it, and I'm going to make sure not to water it. No more rain on it. Now, that's the mashal. Now it's the nimshal. Kiker Hashem tzvot Beit Yisrael. The vineyard is the house of Israel. Vish Yehuda netash Ashuab. The people of Yehuda are perfect vines that were supposed to give grapes. And listen to the analogy. By kab lemishpat v'nei mispach v'tzedakah v'nei tzedakah. It goes like this. God was hoping for mishpat and tzedakah. Remember those words? God was hoping to take this wealth and do mishpat and tzedakah. That's the analogy of good grapes. Instead, he got mispach. That's violence. Instead of tzedakah, he got tzedakah. He got the cry of oppression. God was hoping to take that wealth and use that wealth to sanctify God by building that just society, have justice and righteousness. Instead, you had iniquity, violence, and mistreating of the poor and thing. And he goes on, starts yelling, people don't care about neighbors and don't respect other people's property. He goes on and on. Woe those get up in the morning just to drink wine. They're drinking beer in the morning and wine at night. There's just party. It's a whole party culture. They're not looking at God. He just goes on and rants into them about God's going to make himself great by punishing them. God demanding mishpat and tzedakah. This is what we quote in Rosh Hashanah davening before Melech HaKadosh. Okay, and then he just goes on and on. He's just ranting on the whole society, primarily about the lack of social justice and what they did with their wealth. Now, you can't miss the theme of Mishpat and Tzedakah, correct? That was the warning when things were going great in the time of Uziel. We had all the potential to be Achrei Ta'amim. We missed that opportunity. We took God's blessings and we became haughty and obnoxious. That's exactly Shirat Hazinu, isn't it? Now, it's not talking about idol worship, just worshiping idols. It's talking about worshiping your own accomplishments, worshiping your wealth, worshiping all the nature gods that give you food and wealth, as opposed to using those blessings and building a just society. And that's what Yeshayahu is screaming about. Because he warned them for years, for decades, he warned them, time of Uziel, they don't listen. That's why God brings Ashur to punish them. That was Perek Yud. Hoy Ashur. Just jump to Perek Yud for a second to make sure you remember it. That's the wrong one. I don't want that one. I want my Tanakh. 1 second. In chapter 10. Isaiah is like super harsh. But it gets worse than Perek Aleph. Where are we? Chapter 10. What does he say? It's these people making laws, but laws of they're making laws to take away. They're taking away the needy should be giving, and they're making laws that basically steal from the poor, and they take advantage of orphans and widows, etc. Okay? And what are you going to do when your punishment comes? Okay, there's Hoy Ashur Shevet Api. Will Ashur, the whip of my anger. Okay, I'm sending Ashur to this nation who's not serving God properly. The nation of my anger, I'm going to command them to basically to take booty and to wipe out and to tread them down, etc. Okay, but he himself doesn't think so. Ashur's no more righteous than we are; they're worse. But he's just doing it for his own haughtiness. But God's using Ashur to punish us. That's the main thing that Yeshayahu talks about. Ultimately, he'll save us in the time of Chizkiyahu. Only after almost everything is wiped out, at the last minute, he'll save Yerushalayim. That's chapters 11 and 12, or at the end of 10 and 11 and 12. Now, in light of that background, I'm saying that's why Isaiah is so sharp and so harsh. But why is that analogy of Mashal HaKerem with Mishpat and Tzedakah? Listen now to Isaiah chapter 1, which is after the punishment happens. We'll go back to Perek Aleph in Yeshayahu, and that's why the book opens up with his harshest message. Let's go back. We saw before. Now we understand why he's quoting Hazinu. Shimbo Shomayim Vazinu Aretz. That's the message. Who's to blame when things go wrong? Okay. No, okay. Hoy goy chotel, like sitting nation, am keved avon, zer merim badim ashkitim. They left God, and they're going backwards. Okay. Now, basically everyone's punished here. Listen, Artzechem shmama, your land is desolate. Arechem shvufot eish. This is talking about after Ashur wiped us out. This is after Lachish is destroyed. This is all during the time of Hizkiyahu. Okay, your land, other nations are eating its produce. Okay, and the destruction is so bad, it's like the destruction of stone. Okay, and only Yerushalayim is left. Only Batzion is left, which is referring to Yerushalayim, like a little hut in the middle of a field. Okay, now there's one last city left, and that's going to be saved for the last minute. And if it wasn't for what? If it wasn't for God, you should have destroyed the whole thing. Our destruction was almost complete, like destruction of Sodom and Amorah. Now, is he only using Sodom and Amorah to describe a terrible destruction, or is he saying your sin is similar to Sodom and Amorah? Okay, but listen what he says now. Shimu dvar Hashem ksine Sodom azinu Torah ta'achleinu amamorah. Again, shirat azinu, shimu vazinu. Listen up, the words. The people of Israel are like officers of stone. Listen to my words, your people of Amorah. Says what? He's saying, you're acting like Sodom and Amorah. In case you forgot what was the sin of Sodom and Amorah, we'll just go back real quick to Yecheskel. I'll go back to this in a second, just to refresh your memory. In Yecheskel chapter 16, verse 48. He talks about when this is 100 years later, when Jerusalem's getting destroyed in the time of Yirmiyahu, at the end of Beit Rishon, when they make the same mistakes again. He says, your sin, he says, Chai Hashem, God swearing, if Sodom, your neighbor, and its surrounding cities, you're worse than they were. Okay, now your sins of Yerushalayim is worse than Sodom. What was the sin of Sodom? Okay, your neighbor. Go'on tzibat lachem, it was an abundance of wealth and bread. Nice and quiet. Shavat v'ashket, hayula lefateh, the whole neighborhood was nice and quiet, full of wealth and produce. V'yad anivi avam le'chzika. They didn't care about the poor and the needy. They became haughty, b'tik bena. They did 12, this was an abomination in my eyes, and therefore I got rid of them, like you saw. And then he goes on and talks about the punishment, that Jerusalem gets the same punishment as Shomron. So you see this over and over again. Sodom was a city of wealth who couldn't care about, they had no hachnasat orchim, and they treated their guests, they were full of wealth and couldn't care about their guests. And that takes us back to the story of Lot and Sodom, we'll see back in a minute. Now, back to chapter 1 in Yeshayahu. So the comparison to Sodom and Amorah is not just how bad the destruction is, but what was the sin of Yerushalayim? Saying, if that's your society, remember, Hizkiyahu built the temple, they're bringing korbanot left and right. They got rid of all the bamot. There's no idol worship during Hizkiyahu's time, and all these things still happen. So God's saying, "Who needs all your korbanot?" Okay? I'm satiated with all these burnt offerings. Okay, but like steak, he says, "Don't give me that bull. Don't give me all those animals. Don't give me the cows and the ox and the sheep, etc. I don't want them. When you come to my house to pray, you come to the temple, you're trespassing. Okay, quit bringing me these meaningless gifts." The Torah, this should be sweet smelling. In my eyes, it's an abomination. I hate your Hallel, I hate your Rosh Chodesh, I hate your Shabbat. Okay, your Rosh Chodesh parties, your Moadim, I hate them. He says, okay, they annoy me. I can't take them anymore. And when you put up your hands in prayer, Vastim Kapechem, I'm not listening to your prayers. That's the Hester Panim. And you can daven all you want. I'm not listening because your hands are full of bloodshed. You don't care about human life. If you want God to answer your prayers, wash your hands and clean yourself, get your society back together again. Get rid of your evil ways. Okay? Stop doing evil. Okay? Here we go. Limdu hetev, dirshu mishpat. Do good, search to do good, make sure there's justice, get rid of things that are make sure the oppressed aren't oppressed. Shiftu yadom, do mishpat for the yatom and almana. And then God argues that if you do that, I'm willing, no matter how bad your stain is, I can clean away all your sins if you do proper tshuva. If you listen and obey me, you'll eat the good of the land. If you don't listen and you continue your haughtiness and your evil ways and you rebel against me, there'll be more war and more punishment. He says, and then what happened to this great city? It was once filled with mishpat and tzedek yanibas, again, mishpat and tzedakah, and now they're all full of murders. And maybe you can murder people by, not just by first degree murder, by second degree, even third degree, by not taking care of those in need. Okay? Your money is all counterfeit. Again, bad business practices. Your measures, you're watering down your liquids like wine, etc., selling it and adding water instead of wine. All your ministers in your government, they're all rebellious. They're all stealing. They all take bribes, only care about their own money. They don't take their leadership to help the orphan and the widow. And therefore, God says, I've had it with you. I'm going to clean up all your impurities. And then, Vashiva Shavtak Rishona, this is right out of Shemon Esrei. We pray for that God brings us back, our judges, like the good old days. And then you'll be called a city of righteousness. What will bring redemption? So you can't alter Yeshayahu, his theme of Mishpat and Tzedakah. And in his opening line, he has to explain why is our punishment almost as bad as Sodom and Amorah? Because our behavior is like Sodom and Amorah. And we didn't learn Sefer Bereshit properly. Now, where's Yeshayahu getting this from? Like Sodom and Amorah, if you remember Bereshit, where are we? We need, wrong one, here we go, stop this share. If you remember, in Sefer Bereshit, there are two dialogues that God has with Avram Avinu. And that's it. In other words, God talks to them and gives them commandments and tells them what to do, but there's only two serious dialogues in God and Avram Avinu. None with Yitzhak and none with Yaakov, but they're both about their future. The first major dialogue is it's called Brit Ben Abtarim, where God says, you'll get the land, you'll have children, you'll inherit the land only after going through suffering and slavery and oppression, and then redemption from slavery in Egypt, and punishing your oppressor, and then leaving with great wealth, and then you'll enter a covenant with God and get your land. And the other conversation is about Sodom, which is all about Mishpat and Tzedakah. Now, in the time of Avram Avinu, there's a cry of oppression from Sodom, and God's going to share with Avram his deliberation whether Sodom should be destroyed or not for their bad behavior. So if I take a quick look at that story, where are we? We want this one. Here we go. Sodom. I just have a source sheet I'll use for it. I'll put you guys over here. Okay. In the story of Sodom, actually, this is a better one over here. Okay. Avram, the story of Sodom begins with Avram and Sarah doing Hachnasat Orchim for the three guests and the news of the birth of Yitzchak. And the three men go up to leave. And Avram is about to have this conversation. We'll go back to these psukim in a minute. God tells Avram, Sakat Sodom v'Amar Rabba. There's a cry of oppression coming out of Sodom. Their sin is very heavy. I'm going to go down now and see, is this Sakah, is it beyond repair? Yes or no? In other words, God isn't just sharing with Avram his decision. He's sharing with Avram his deliberation. Is Sodom worthy of total punishment, or is there a chance for recovery? He's going to check it out by sending the other two men, who become his shlichim, become his malachim, to see how they treat transient guests. Of course, everyone, no one, only Lot brings them in. Everyone has protests about harboring guests. And then Avram asks the question, if you find, if you're going to check out the city, there'll be, if you punish the city, innocent people will die. So if you have 50 righteous people, would you save the entire city? Because maybe 50 people, maybe the next day there'll be 60. And Avram argues, remember, here's the idea of Mishpat and Tzedakah again. What's he say beforehand? Remember, Hashofet quotes Lo Yasem Mishpat. He goes on, where's it? I skipped up. Wait, we go. Remember the psukim inside. Then Hashofet quotes Lo Yasem Mishpat, Avram asks. Now, why is that theme there? Because before we have this whole dialogue between God and Avram Avinu about Avram needs to know the ways of God, because he has to understand what the reason for his chosenness. Remember, Avram was chosen, you become a great nation, you'll bring blessing to other nations by being his model nation. So Chumash tells the reader before this whole dialogue begins with God and Avram, God had said to himself, I can't hide from Avram what I'm about to do, but about my deliberation. Why? Avram is going to be one day a great nation and powerful. He can bring blessing to other nations. That's what will be, it's what can be. Now, Ki Dativ, I came to know him Ashur tzaved banav b'to acharav, so he would command his children and they their children to follow the ways of God to do tzedek and mishpat. In order for God's vision for Avram to come true, God is going to give us the land, bless us with prosperity and wealth. We have to use that prosperity in a proper way to represent God. That's God's vision for the people. We're almost there in the time of Uziel, and God is terribly upset because we don't take that blessing, we don't take that prosperity and use it properly. And therefore, that was the sin of Sodom. That's why God punished Sodom and Amorah. That's why Lot was saved, because he was that one tzaddik in Sodom, and God did a surgical rape to save him. But we see from here the underlying purpose of our chosen is to be a model nation, to bring blessing to other nations by being a model nation, what we do with our prosperity. It's the same message that we saw that in Yecheskel. David is chosen because he does mishpat and tzedakah for his nations, and Tidim Ayin Bet, David tells Shlomo his vision for his kingdom, that you should judge your people with tzedek and aniachah b'mishpat. You see in Tidim 72, David gives this exact message to his son Shlomo, how he should set up his kingdom, and then should be a point that other nations should come and bow down to him. We need to set up a king doing mishpat and tzedakah, and that'll be this Achrit Hamim that Yeshayahu was talking about. We had it for a short time in the time of Shlomo. We almost can have it again in the time of Uziel, and we don't reach. God gave us all the ability to do that, like that vineyard. We don't take that blessings from God and use it properly. Instead, we go astray and don't follow His ways and don't take advantage of God's blessings to serve Him properly. We have the same idea with Malkat Shva's visit. In the time of Shlomo reached the high point, she sees this kingdom in her visit. She said, your God should be blessed, who put you on the throne of Israel to do mishpat and tzedakah for the nation. In light of that, that's why Yeshayahu says, what brings redemption is doing tzedek and mishpat. The reason why God's bringing Ashur to punish us because we're acting like Sodom and Amorah without tzedek and mishpat. And just going back to Malchut David, what the whole thing is about, in Yirmiyahu, what's God tell Yirmiyahu? We have the same thing. Oh, that was the same verse over there. I'm sorry, let's just go open a regular Tanakh real fast. Stop this share. This whole theme of tzedek and mishpat is so central to all the Nevi'im. Yeshayahu and Yirmiyahu, wrong share. 1 second. No, 1 second. Share. One more Tanakh opened. To show you one more source from Yirmiyahu 70. Where is it? 22. Okay. Go to the throne of the house of Yehuda and tell them the following: Kol Hashem asu mishpat u'tzedakah b'tzilu kazu mi'arashok. This is the message. The Melech Yehuda Yeshiva Kisei David. And I chose you. Your kingdom is all about doing mishpat and tzedakah. Take care of the orphan, the widow, etc. Don't do iniquity. Don't do violence. Don't take advantage of people. Care about human life, etc. If you do that, you can keep your kingdom. If not, God will bring Khurban. So in a nutshell, what Isaiah is screaming is that we were blessed with prosperity in the time of Uziel. It didn't work. We didn't use that prosperity properly. He warns us and warns us. Ashur comes and starts punishing us. Some people turn to Assyrian gods like Achaz, and that doesn't work. Some people like Chizkiyahu turn to our God. But God says, okay, but it's not enough to bring korbanot and pray. You have to fix your society. And they don't. And God brings this terrible punishment. It takes a total wipeout until the people finally do proper tshuva. And that's going to be, in light of that, now we can see we'll go back to Yeshayahu again. What's going to bring redemption? The end of beginning of chapter 11. Where are we? Oh, here we are. Back to Yeshayahu. Chapter 11, chapter 10, 11 is fine enough, okay? This can bring redemption. He'll have Yirat Elohim. Yirat Hashem will have this king. This is what called Melech HaMashiach. He'll judge properly, etc. It's in V'shavat b'tzedek dalim. V'uchiach b'mishalam ve'aretz. V'ika be'eretz b'shevet pivrach. Tzvotav yemit rasha. V'yet tzedek izor motnav v'emunah izor chalatzav. Got it? We'll finally have a king doing mishpat and tzedakah, and then people get along. There'll be peace and quiet. Even animals will get along with each other, and then they won't do any evil and won't be corrupt in my whole land. Everyone know God, what God wants from them. And then that will bring, that's when God will redeem his people and bring them back from Ashur and Mitzrayim, etc. And then the famous Nevuah, what do you call it, of redemption in chapter 12, which ends the first unit. We'll thank God even though he punished us. He now Yeshua tiftach v'lovcha, etc. V'shatam v'sason. And then when God brings redemption, we'll say at that time, Hudu Hashem kiru b'shmo divamim b'lotav. We'll praise God and thank God. We'll sing his praises. Tzali v'roni b'Atzion. Was when God saves us, we have to not just say thank you and act thank you. And that's how chapter 12 in Isaiah ends. That's the first unit. That's called Melech HaMashiach. Chizkiel almost gets there. Not enough, but we have at least a turnaround in this time. And that explains the first chapter of Isaiah. It's talking about the end of Yeshayahu's career, but it's the sad fulfillment of his warning he gave in the beginning of his career. So if I look at the timeline of the book, where are we? Yeah, time's up. Where are we? Again, the next chapter is going to be Nuvot about the other nations, of what Ashur is going to do to them as well. Those are Masaot. Maybe we'll deal with them next week a little bit, how he does with the other nations. The thing I want to get across today was understanding the time period from Sefer Melachim that Yeshayahu is giving his Nuvot, why his Nuvot are so harsh, and why people just don't get it, because they can't understand why is God punishing a nation that did so much tshuva and rebuilt the temple and brought so many korbanot. Why is Ashur still successful in a time like that? And Yeshayahu gives this really harsh message in the first 12 chapters. It's interesting that Chazal picked the first chapter of Isaiah for the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av, because we're not remembering on the fast day what happened, but why it happened. Where are we? Stop that share. And I wanted one more source sheet. No, we did that one. Oh yeah, I wanted to show you the outline of the book. 1 second. Outline. Someone asked about how the book's organized. That's over here. Yeshayahu. There we go. If I want a quick overview of the book, oh, what happened here? Screen sharing is pause. Wait, unpause. Wait, to resume. No, screen sharing. I messed up here. Try it again. Okay. You see my screen now, I hope?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So the first chapter is the introduction, focusing on the key theme of the book. And at first, when you read it, it's unclear, but when you read it carefully, you see it's the time of Chizkiel. Then we have the time period of Uziel, and why got so disappointed with his people. And that's the Mashal HaKerem. Chapter 6, we didn't do. That's the Shekhinah leaving. God sees the Shekhinah leaving. And Yeshayahu is the one who's supposed to rebuke them. And God tells them, you warn them they're not going to get it because they're not listening. The people, their hearts are just too full. They're too full of themselves to listen. Then what happens in the time of Achaz until Chizkiel, the rise of Ashur and why God's sending Ashur to punish them. Then chapters 3 to 23 is the rebuke of the other nations. Also coming, God's not only going to send Ashur to punish us, so punish all the nations, and the reason why all their thing. We have a whole section which is really difficult. They're called Poetic Isaiah. It's Poetic Rebuke of Israel. Maybe we'll have time. That's going to be the prakim we're learning this week. There'll be this historical appendix in chapters 36 to 39, and then we'll see what's called Deutero Isaiah, the Nevot of Nechama from Beit Sheni. We'll deal with them in 2 weeks from now. We'll deal with those. So that was our quick crash course on the first 12 chapters in light of what we saw in Sefer Melachim. Hope that wasn't too depressing, but
11, 12, rebuke, or was talking about when Mashiach, the life of Mashiach?
Start again?
You wrote in that timeline that 11 and 12 was a rebuke to Achaz?
No, first the rebuke. No, what will bring Mashiach? Let me go back to what I wrote there. Not that one, this one. Rebuke from Achaz Chizkiel and the rise of Ashur.
Yeah.
No, and then but in the end, in chapters 10, 11, and 12, it's going to be what will bring Yimot Mashiach.
And that's related. Why? I feel like I missed something.
No, that's what needs to happen. That can fix things. God's saying it's not going to be a total destruction. You'll recover. But in order for that, remember, what's a choter? That's a little sprout coming out of a tree was cut off. Remember, there's only a trunk left?
Yeah.
It looks like the tree was cut off. A little sprout comes out of the tree that's going to, hopefully the tree will grow again. So, he's saying, Yudah and Yisrael were totally wiped out, like a tree cut down, but it's not dead. A little sprout will come up, and that sprout will start redemption, but that sprout is going to grow on Tzedek Mishpat. See all the analogies to nature the Navi's using?
Yes.
All the time, yeah. But again, that's at the end, after after Artzechem Shmama, he's afraid people give up altogether and they'll leave God altogether. No, there's recovery, but I need a king who's going to do Mishpat and Tzedakah. And that's Chizkiel, that started Chizkiel. Chizkiel finally gets it right, but it takes a long time till we get it right. Now, when you read Sefer Melachim, you don't see all this because Chizkiel sounds like the greatest king ever. And next week we'll talk about his complaint about the Bamot. We'll read when we get to the story of Sancheriv. We'll have a better understanding of what the Navi's complaining about, what Bamot are, why they're, even though they're Avodat Hashem, why the Navi calls them Avodah Zarah. We'll feel bad about them. We'll understand that much better in next week's share. Again, but the main section of Isaiah that everyone learns are the first 12 chapters. Those are relatively easy to understand, and their message is super clear. And chapter 6 is Yeshayahu's appointment or God's disappointment. That's the idea. Is that God is appointing him, or God telling Uziel, remember, Shnat Motam El Uziel was the year he got Tzarat. That's when God says, I gave you a chance. The king is so haughty with all his wealth. He goes to bring Torah. The king comes in, God leaves. So the Shekhinah leaves when Uziel brings to bring Torah. That's representing an overall feeling of the nation of haughtiness. There's a danger when too much prosperity. If you pray for prosperity, the goal isn't prosperity. The goal is what you do with your prosperity. And that's why God's so disappointed. And that's why the people, again, like I said last time, when you come to the temple and your relationship with God is like a consumer, and I'm bringing korbanot so I get wealthy, and my goal in life is pursuit of happiness and wealth, and you're coming as a consumer to God, God doesn't want that. We're coming as employees. God will bless us with wealth and prosperity as a tool that we use to sanctify God. And that's why the people are all confused because, hey, we're bringing korbanot and things were good before. Why are things bad? We're so religious and we're so good. And God's saying it's what you do with your wealth that God's judging you with and the society that you build. And that's why his message is so harsh. And to this day, it's similar.
Right.
If Isaiah was around today, no one would listen to him probably either. Anyway, but that's too much. I want to get into modern day politics. I want to get myself in trouble.
He's saying they're prophetic or descriptive.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
In other words, was he saying what he saw happening in the times of Uziel, that I'm watching people behave with wealth in ways that are inappropriate, or he's saying,
yeah, just read chapter 3. It talks about the women mostly, but it reflects the men as well. What they're doing with all their wealth. It's just the flaunting of wealth and only caring about wealth and style and without any, again, nothing wrong with the wealth itself, but not helping those in need, not distributing it properly. And then the corruption comes with it, lying and cheating and taking bribes, where the big God becomes wealth and money. And God they trust on the dollar bill. Already. Okay. So next week we'll try to finish up that big chunk of Isaiah, the middle part, which is real complicated, and then we'll get to Deuteronomy Isaiah, which is the most interesting part that we're so familiar with from the Sefer and Chamta.
Not related to what you said, could you give us some hints on how to learn it? It's such hard words, and the language is so foreign.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Technique.
So on the Shnayim LeYom thing, they send out like links every time for how to read. So they have links for Alex Israel gives a really nice podcast, parak by parak. He does a really good job. He has really good English and he speaks nice and clear. So he's awesome, Alex. So every week they send his link. There's articles they send out, and I'm trying to give the overall background and like how the book's structured and how it relates to the underlying themes of Chumash. But parak by parak, that's already much more detailed.
You find the Mitzudos to be the most helpful in it when you're just learning for Pshat, to read it. Is it where would you look if you're reading it in?
There's Mitzudot, there's what do you call it? Then there's Dat Mikra is really good translation and like pasuk by pasuk explanation in Hebrew. Dat Mikra is very good. An overall thing, Ben Hillel wrote a book together with Rabbi Ben Nun and Yeshayahu. It's very good. I think it came out in English as well.
That's not so much. I mean, it's explaining. It's not so much the reading of it.
No, it's not a pasuk by pasuk. I think the best understanding line by line, especially Yeshayahu, is not mikra.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's a really extensive word. I think Amos Chacham did that one, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
That was a real good work. That's what I use when I'm looking when I try to understand the psukim. Then you can you can compare different English translations. It's always fun between JPS and now the new Magerman edition, and you read Robert Alter, and you see, it's very hard to translate Yeshayahu. And you try to keep the style, you try to keep the messages, the words, the background, to make it. It's hard to translate poetry. Now, why is he so poetic? That's another question. Why is he so? There's plethora of Nevi'im at the time that relate to this. The thing I said last time. There's such a massive question. Why are all these bad things happening? Thus, and the people just can't buy it because we're to blame. And that's why Shirat Hazinu is so central. Shirat is saying when something bad happens, don't blame God, blame yourselves. And people don't like blaming themselves. They call them self-hating Jews and things like that. And you can't even start with that nowadays. Because it's always someone else's fault, everything. Already. Okay, and have a good week, everybody. And hopefully pray for a little more Yeshua. Bye-bye.
Amen.
Thank you.